Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the iMonnit.com cloud-based sensor portal training. For this training, we will be discussing the use of the iMonnit platform. During this training, we are going to cover how to create a new account, how to create users, set up rules, assign a rule, run a report, pulling the CSV data, as well as other frequently asked questions. Now, the steps we will be going through are after you have purchased the equipment. To begin, let's go ahead by starting to create the new account. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to any web-enabled device and go to Monnit.com. Now, once you do that, you're going to land on the page that you will start the creation of the account. You go ahead and create an account, and this is where you're going to put in your username and password. So once we've done that, we want to go ahead and click I have acknowledged. I have read and agree to the terms and conditions. Make sure you do go through those and then go ahead and click the create account. Additionally, if you have clients in other languages or do speak a secondary language, you can select that from here. Those are the options that we currently have. So I'm going to go ahead and select English at this time and go ahead and hit create account. So at this time, it's going to ask you to validate the email and then put in the verification code that was sent to your email. So once we have that code put in, it'll bring us to the welcome to your account. So this is where we're going to start to set your profile up, device setup, and of course, rules and notifications. So next we'll be moving to the profile setup. This is where we're going to set up the specific users. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and input the first name. And the last name. And then we'll select whether or not we want to do SMS or direct delivery. For this, we're going to go ahead and do external provider. It's completely up to you if you decide to do external provider. I do want to advise that those messages aren't guaranteed, only direct delivery is. For SMS, we're going to go ahead and select T-Mobile. And put in that contact number. Again, for the automated calls, these have additional costs associated with them as well as direct delivery. You'll want to work with your sales rep in order to add those to your account. So we're going to go ahead and put the information in here. And we'll see that for voice calls in the US, it's 3 credits. And then if you do decide to do direct delivery, it's 1 credit on average, but it is dependent on where the call ends and terminates. So we're going to go ahead and hit the save changes. And now we see that that profile has been set up. Next, we're going to go ahead and go to device setup. So this is going to be when we are adding our equipment. Now for this, when we first create the account, we want to make sure that our gateway gets added first. So we're going to go ahead and hit gateway setup. Now there's 2 options for this. You can either scan the QR code or input the device ID, whatever is easier for you. If you try to scan the QR code and either it doesn't want to scan or you're having issues with that, you can always come back and switch to device ID. For this, I'm going to go ahead and use device ID so you can see what it is that I'm putting in. Now on the outside of the device, there's a sticker that has a sensor ID and a sensor code. Your sensor ID will be numbers, and then the sensor code will be letters, and we'll start with IM. So we'll go ahead and put the gateway ID in. Then we're going to go ahead and hit the next button. Now from here, this is where you can set up how often it's checking in as well as the gateway name. For this, we'll go ahead and set it to 4.0 test, and we want that gateway to be checking in at 5 minutes. So we'll go ahead and hit the next button. Next, this is going to walk you through how to set up the gateway physically. So what you will do if this is an Ethernet gateway is you will plug this into your modem, Cat5 jacker switch, power on the gateway, and then validate the gateway status. Now, while validating the gateway, the lights on that gateway will go through a cycle. And that's basically its setup stage where those lights are going to start with the first one and say, okay, I need to make sure that I'm grabbing an IP. A secondary one that says I'm speaking to the IP that I'm supposed to for the portal. And then the last is a connection between sensors and gateways. Now, in this case, this gateway is already checking in our system. So I'm going to go ahead and click the skip these steps. Now, as the screen mentions, if your gateway is not communicating, your sensors will also not be able to communicate. So this step is very important to start off with to ensure that the system functions as expected. If you do find that you are having issues with those lights going green, please contact your support services at support@monnit.com or contact 801-561-5555 extension 2. We also offer support via chat services Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Mountain Standard Time, and we're always happy to help. So if you have additional gateways that you want to set up, this is a good time to do that to make sure that you're getting everything up and running first, as the system will not function correctly if the gateways are not online and checking in. So since we have that gateway online and checking in, we're going to go ahead and next add a sensor. So from there, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to input the sensor ID and the sensor code. Now that sticker is always going to be on the outside. There is a sticker on the inside, but that's more for our internal teams. If we ever need to bring a device back in for repair, NIST recertification, or any other work that we need to do on the device. Next, I'm going to click next. Here we see that this is a button sensor. Depending on the type of sensors that you've purchased, it will change what this says here, as well as change the trees in terms of what rules can be provided and the settings. For the selection down here, it doesn't really matter what you select. If it doesn't have any options or if it has custom, it won't change the functionality. Next, we're going to get skip. From there, it's going to verify that your gateway is online to connect with the sensor. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hit skip because I'm already aware that the devices are connecting up in our system. Next, it's going to add the sensor into the gateway list. At this point, this is where you'll want to add the battery in. If you have done this part before now, please remove the battery, give it about 30 seconds, and then put it back in. The reason why, if you've added it prior to this step, it will not communicate the right way that it's supposed to and will not connect up to the gateway. Finally, it's going to validate the sensor status. And this is just making sure that the sensor can connect up to the gateway and to the system to make sure that it's giving the data. We're going to go ahead and skip that step for now. So at this point, if you have additional sensors that you would want to add into the system, this is where you would do that. But since we just have the one for this training, we're going to go ahead and hit the edit sensor settings. This is where we can create the heartbeat as well as any aware state, get into failed transmission before link mode and other information. This is what a basic account looks like. We have two options when it comes to our services. So you have a basic where it only comes with one user, a heartbeat up to 2 hours, as well as having multiple users and things of that nature. For the button sensor, it doesn't have an aware state, so you won't see it on this one. You'll see that it has the option for 10 minutes. So this is the premiere. You'll see the communication is site survey. We have two options on that one. You can select it to site survey or service button. So site survey is, say, for example, if you are walking around an area and are trying to check connection, this is where that would come in handy. Otherwise, you can set it to service button to alert when the button's been pressed. You'll see that the heartbeat has been set to 10 minutes. This is the lowest that you can go with the Premier service, but we do have options for 1 to 9 minutes with our HX credits. And you can reach out to your sales rep to get more information in regards to that. Now, failed transmission before link mode. This has to do when a device can't communicate. Failed transmission means that it will miss 3 heartbeats before it starts to try and find another gateway. It's best to leave this at 2 or 3 and never set it to 0, as this will stop it from recommunicating with the gateway when it comes back online. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and give this sensor a custom name. And we're going to go ahead and call it button press. As I mentioned, I am going to leave that at 10 minutes as it is the lowest. The other thing I do want to mention with this is it is important that the sensor heartbeat not be lower than the gateway. If it is, the inconsistencies between the communication will make it look like the device is offline, even though it's functioning exactly as expected. So if you have your gateway set to 10 minutes, the sensor heartbeat should be set at 10 minutes or higher. If you have the gateway heartbeat set to 30 minutes, then the sensor should also be set at 30 minutes or higher. So on this screen, you'll also see the sensor info. If you ever need to contact us, this is vital information for us, as it speeds up the process and us being able to help you and get the information you need and on your way. So at the top, you'll see the sensor code and ID. This is the same information that's listed on the outside of the device. Next is going to be the firmware version. After that is the radio band. As Monnit's been open for over 10 years, we have multiple devices and clients who've used our equipment since we've opened our doors. The radio band will advise you if you have our Gen 1 equipment, our Alta line, our MOE devices, or any future products that we offer. The last line is going to be the SKU. This is going to be the part number that's associated with your device. When replacing a device, this information is helpful if you don't have access to the device, the sticker on the outside has been damaged or rubbed away, and helps us define what system in particular you're utilizing. After we've set the information into place, we're going to go ahead and hit the save button. As this mentioned, low heartbeats may severely impact battery life, and it'll ask you to acknowledge that you understand that. Now, in terms of devices like button press, those are going to check in when the button's pressed. It's a reactionary versus, say, for example, a temperature one that will check in specifically on the heartbeat. From there, we're going to go ahead and hit continue. Now, up at the top, you'll see several symbols, and I'm just going to take a quick moment to go over those. So first is going to be the sensor. This is going to be all sensors that are on your specific account. Right now, you'll see that that device is grayed out. That means that it's not checking in as expected. This was just added from another account, so it's not unexpected that it's not checking in yet, as I do not have the physical device. When working with this system and setting it up, you do want to be on site with the equipment, as it will help get you online and moving very quickly. So I'm going back into that sensor. We're going to go ahead and press there. So on this page, it's going to bring you to the details page, and this details page will go over any data that's there, as well as let you know what network it's on and the gateway that it's communicating with. Currently, we showed that the last message was sent is unavailable, as well as the next check-in, since it has not checked in yet. On the right-hand side, we'll see that if there are any readings associated with this, we'll see any notes to the side here, what the last communication was, time, date, as well as signal between sensor and gateway, and the battery life. This sensor has been used on other accounts before, so this is why the data is starting there. With the new device, you won't have any information input there yet. Now, looking at the charting, there's two options there. You have an option for data and you have an option for battery. So for the data, you would select here on the calendar and select your start date and your end date. It is important to note that there is a limitation on how much data can be pulled for a single unit. If you are needing a longer time frame, you can reach out to your sales rep to inquire about the costs associated with that. All data is stored online for up to 1 year with the Premier and up to 45 days with the basic plan. If you need anything beyond that that's archived, you can also reach out to your sales rep to get that information as well. So by selecting the start date, you can also select the time as well. And then select the end date. And then we would go ahead and set. If there were any data allocated for this time frame, this is where we would see that at. This is also true for the battery as well. It would list the percentages available here. If you do need to print this screen off, that function is not currently available in our system, but you can screenshot that and input it into another program of your choosing. Next is going to be the history of the sensor. Now, currently there's none showing listed under this, but if there were, you could come over here, set the date, as well as the end, and then hit the set point. If there are any data readings during that time frame, that's where that information would be listed. And then to the left of that, there is a little, or to the right of that, there's a little cloud symbol with the little arrow. You would click that, and it would download the information for you to pull CSV file. Those are really good if you have an out of the blue request for data. Otherwise, it's always best to set reports to generate daily, weekly, or monthly so that you have those ahead of time rather than having to do a manual CSV pull, which can often be very time consuming depending on how much data and how many sensors are required. Next is going to be rules. So at this point, we haven't created any rules yet, but if there were, they would be down here. And I'll come back to this after we've created one. If you would like to pause a notification, you can do so from this page, or you can do so directly from the rules tab, depending on if you need to pause it at a sensor level or at a rule level. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and hit that create a new rule. And there are multiple options for setting up rules. So you have it based on sensory reading, device battery level, device inactivity, scheduled time, and advanced rule. Sensor readings are going to be based specifically on the readings taking from the device. So in the case of the button press, if I want to be notified when that button's pressed, I would select sensor reading. Device battery level and device inactivity are always good sensor notifications to have to let you know if a device is offline or a battery is going to be dead soon. While our devices offer longevity in their battery life, it is always good to know where battery health is ahead of time. For schedule time, if you have a device that you are wanting information on at the same time every day, scheduled time is a great way to do that. And you can notify as few or as many people as you want. And then advanced rule. Advanced rule gets into more of our higher setups, such as if you have a temperature sensor that you want to notify after a certain amount of time, so that you can set that notification to say, okay, if this device reads for X amount for 30 minutes, then I would like these people to be notified. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set up a few of these now. We're going to start with the sensor reading. So since we only have the one button press option right now, we're going to go ahead and select that. But depending on what your device is going to offer different options for setting that notification up. So in this case, we have the option to notify when sensor is pressed or not pressed. Next is the condition tab. This is going to be what happens when that notification is triggered. So when doing that, you'll want to go ahead and select based on what your needs are. I'm going to go ahead and send email. Now it'll bring up this set right here, and this is regardless of whether or not you're talking about an email, a text message, or a voice call. So for the to button, since I am the only user, I'm going to go ahead and select that. Currently, you'll see that it's set to off. That means that I'm not getting any notification, and that's why it's blue instead of green. So we're going to go ahead and select no delay. But if you wanted to have a delay in how it messages you, you would simply select the message time frame before it triggered. It works similar to the aware state, but the aware state would still start a count, or the aware state doesn't use a countdown timer essentially. It won't even acknowledge the notification until it has actually hit that time frame. So we're going to go ahead and hit no delay and hit set. So you'll see now that that particular user has been selected. It's highlighted in green. We're going to go ahead and hit save. Next is going to be subject. So for this is what's going to come across my email when it's sent through. And we're going to input button press. This is completely customizable based on your needs, as is what's offered in the information below. If you need to have specific people notified outside of what your iMonnit allows, or if you have specific instructions, this is a wonderful place to put that. Now, you can have more than the information just listed here. If you hit the Merge Fields tab, this will break down the different options that you would put in and what information is provided there. So you'll see that there is ID, name, reading, network, notification, subject, account number, company name, address, city, state, postal code, country, date, time, reading date, reading time, original reading date, as well as acknowledge. The one thing I do want to make very clear about the acknowledge, that is only functional in email. It does not work in text or voice calls. If you take this out and don't leave anything in there, it will just default to the basic information that's there, name, ID, and then of course the reading. From there, I'm going to go ahead and press the save button. And then we'll go from there. Now, create system actions has to do with if you have multiple devices that are alerting and you want to bounce off of each other. We won't get into that training today, but if you do have additional questions about that, please reach out to our support staff. We're happy to address that information for you. Or you can look into our local alert devices as well. So from there, we're going to go ahead and hit done adding tasks. And from here, it'll ask us to name the rule. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and name it button press. Now, in terms of rules, if you have multiple devices already on there, you can hit the add additional devices and it will take you to the condition to add multiple devices on there. If you'd like to add a schedule so that you're only getting notifications during specific hours, you can do that as well as advanced settings or create a new rule. Since we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and hit done adding rules. And then we're going to go ahead and hit setup complete. Those are going to be the base functionality for that information. Now you can see that the sensor is now checking in as well as the gateway. So we know that it's functioning as expected. So the gateway should have all three lights green and you'll start to see readings with your device. Now on this main page, if you have sensors or rules that you would like to keep a closer eye on each page has a heart. You can click that and then it will show up here in the favorites tab. If you have any reports that have been emailed, the most recent ones will be here up at the top, and then the sensor list with all of the sensors checking in, as well as rules that have been triggered. Next, I want to get into maps. Not everyone is going to utilize this. This is more about if you want to know where they're at, or if you utilize it in a way such as we have a hot springs that we work with that has a map on it with the pools that they have for clients to utilize and the temperatures. Otherwise, if you don't want to use this, this is not required. This is an optional thing. I do also need to advise that they're not GPS based. So if you move a device, you need to move it in the map as well. So if you require charting, this is a good way to access that information. As I mentioned earlier, we only have one, but if we did have multiples, you'd be able to select, hit your date and time, hit charting sensors, and it would stack. As you can see here, there's no information because it hasn't been pressed or released yet under the new rulings. So there's no data there, but if there was, you'd have multiples and you can check it against others. Next, we're going to talk reports. So for reports, we have multiple options here. This is really where you are able to set up reports daily, weekly, or monthly based on your needs, as well as other options. So we have four main categories. We have administrative, gateway export, sensor export, as well as location. Administrative is going to be more for your options in an access log and who's checking in. Sent notifications is going to be any notifications that were sent during that time frame. Logged notes report is going to be any reports that are any notes that were logged by users. Calibration certification is going to pull any NIST certified device information. Recurring log notes is anything that were written up until the end of yesterday. Reseller is a sensor calibration report. And lastly, administrative is location activity. And this returns details on the last user who logged in and the last user that communicated for all locations. It looks like we've had a temporary error, so give me just a moment while I handle that. The next option for reports is going to be your gateway export. So the option for there is going to be battery health report. That only applies to gateways with a backup battery. Secondary is going to be device signal and battery health. Third is going to be your sensor export. So the options for these are going to be account report, and that's based on basic sensor information for each sensor in your account. So if you're wanting to know a list of everything you have, that's a great way to get that information and is a one-time pool. Next is going to be the data export, and you can set this to daily, weekly, or monthly. This is going to pull for a single sensor. If you're wanting for more than that, you're going to want to do a network data export, and you can pull that daily, weekly, or monthly as well, but there is a 30 sensor limit. If you are wanting to go over that, please reach out to your sales representative for more information on custom reporting. Next is going to be sensor export by date range. So for this, it is still limited to that 30 sensor limit unless you have custom report, and it is limited to 70,000 data points and 1 year from time report runs. If you need to go over that, reach out to your sales rep to get that custom report. There are additional costs associated with that we're more than happy to help you with. You want to make sure that you have all of the device IDs that you're wanting to run the information from, as well as the timeframes that you need us to pull in order to get that estimated cost for you. Next is going to be sensor temperature minimum and maximum. This can also be pulled daily, weekly, or monthly. If there is a custom report in your system, this is where this will be listed. There's also backfill, which includes network data export, 30 sensor limit, and then of course, HX credit consumption. HX credits are credits that our clients can utilize to go below that 10-minute heartbeat. If you want more information about that, absolutely please feel free to reach out to your sales rep. We're always happy to help. Lastly, is going to be locations. If you have multiple locations, some clients require that they have their own individual accounts so that specific users can only access that information. This is a good place to do that from and to be able to pull all the information. And that includes sensor count by sub-account, sensor for no notification profile, a device info report, account expiration report, inactivity reports for sub-accounts, notification credits by sub-accounts, a reseller user list, and then of course, permissions for all users on the account. Next, I'm going to discuss creating additional users. When setting up your account, you will want to create additional users before you set up your rules so that you're not having to go back and forth and toggle between the two. So we're going to go ahead and add user here. It's going to be much like setting up your initial user. So you'll input the first name, last name, the email associated with it, the login name associated with it, as well as password, and confirm the password. Now there's an option to add as an administrator. When creating an account, you're set up as the primary when you're the first person setting it up. Each additional user needs to be advocated on whether or not they're an administrator or a basic user. And basic users, as well as administrators, can have multiple permissions and availabilities. So we'll go ahead and see what that looks like now. We'll go ahead and put in that information. So for this, I'm going to leave the email and login name the same, as it makes it easiest to remember. Now, in setting this up, you'll want to make sure that you give the new user the information and then have them reset up their password by resetting that. So we'll go ahead and hit the administrator, and then we'll go ahead and hit submit. So now it'll take us to that notification page. Again, we'll want to put in that information if they are wanting to get roles. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and select a different provider. Actually, we'll go ahead and set this one to direct delivery so you can see what that looks like as well. So in this case, we're going to put that in. For direct delivery or voice calls, those do have additional costs associated with them, and they come in packets of 100 or 1,000. And you can purchase those directly from the iMonnit portal, or you can reach out directly to your sales rep who can assist with that. From there, we'll go ahead and hit the save button. So this information is saved. Next, you want to come in and take a look at permissions. So as I mentioned, this user was set up as an administrator, so they have all access. But you can also take some of that access away depending on what the needs are. As you can see, some of those include acknowledging rule, add network, add user, calibrate sensor, can access billing pages or create calibration certificates, delete users, disable rules from the network, edit the account, edit gateway configuration, edit network, other users, rules, edit self, edit sensor multiples, edit sensor group, edit usernames, firmware update allowance, modify visual map, password unlock, pause rules, and reset other user passwords. These can be added or removed as needed, as you can see, depending on what level of access you want someone to have. If they are a brand new user and you did not give them admin access, you will need to go to navigation or to make sure that they have all of the information here, and networks. If this is not checked, they will not be able to see any sensors on the account. So you want to make sure that that is select. And then again, hit the save button. Next is preferences, and this has to do with the date time format. If they have another language that they would prefer to have that in, this is where that is set. That is set on a user level, not on an account level. If you need a secondary language listed for the main account, you would do that during account setup. Default chart display is 1 day, but you can change that here. Maintenance pop-up level, this is going to be any notifications. It's always best to have that allowance so that you know when we're going to be doing things with the system and that things aren't going down without your knowledge. Location sorting, you can do by status or A through Z. Landing page, you can set the default, and then of course you would hit save. Next is going to be your two-factor authentication. So if you do have 2FA set up, you can set it to SMS, email, or if you prefer an authenticator app. So for clients who want to add additional locations, this is where that would be done. And you're essentially setting up sub accounts. Each location has to have its own subscription code in order to be able to have full access to the system. Next is going to be credits. If you have multiple things outside of the Premier that you would like to purchase, you can do that directly through a sales rep, or you can do it through the iMonnit portal. This could include renewing your software subscription, adding notification credits, adding HX credits, sensor prints, unlocking a gateway to point it away from iMonnit for use with their other products and services, a GPS unlock for IoT LTE gateways, and of course, the wallet that holds the payment information for the payment of those services. Next is going to be the API tab. If you are using our services with the third-party application, this is where that will be taken care of. We will not be going into that today since that is a whole training on itself. You can also reach out to our advanced support team at support@monnit.com or by reaching out at 801-561-5555 extension 2. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Mountain Standard Time. Last is going to be settings. This is going to be where your account and company name are listed as well as your primary. If you ever need to change your primary from one client or from one user to another because they're leaving the company or another reason, you would come here and select who you would want that to be. And then of course, hit the save button. Down here, you can also select a recovery email. I would absolutely select one so that if we ever need to work with you on resetting an account or any of that information, that's where we're going to confirm that information from. On the right-hand side, you'll see that the subscription tab is where you would add in the code. So currently this account is on a Premier trial. When you start new services with us, you will get a 45-day free trial. If you've purchased a subscription code, we will have emailed that to you from the system. And this is where you would put that activation code in. And then of course, hit the submit and it'll upgrade you for 1 year. Now, if you do need to purchase Premier, that can be done here, or you can contact your sales rep. From there, you'll hit the save button. And that concludes our tutorial on how to use iMonnit.com. If you do have any additional questions or concerns, you can reach out to us via email, phone call, or we have a click to chat. Our contact number is 801-561-5555. It's extension 1 for sales or extension 2 for support. Via email, you can reach out to us at info@monnit.com, or you can reach out to us at support@monnit.com for any technical questions. Lastly, as I mentioned, we are available chat as well. Our chat lines are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Mountain Standard Time. We are always happy to help. I do want to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.